Welcome to Rich's Papers. Today we're going to talk about painting up the Abhorrant Ghoul King for my Flesh Eater Quartz army. So for this model here, since I'm always trying to push myself with each one that I do, I changed up the base. I didn't like the way the base looked at all, so I did cemetery gates, again, to match my Flesh Eater Quartz army. I think it came out really cool. Let's go down to Tabletown. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so let's start on this base. What the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take a cemetery piece that I got from Reaper Miniatures, Reaper Bones, and I chopped up just for this base right here. I wanted him to jump off of something other than those stones that come naturally in the box for them, because I just didn't like the way that looked. Alright, so I'm going to get some Terrain's Light Earth from AKA Interactive Diorama. I'm going to stuff in the area that was left blank when I chopped that and just set things into the base. Okay, time for Olive Green Stynylrez Primer. And what I'm trying to do is zenithal, maybe a light coat underneath, just highlighting the areas I definitely want to bring attention to. After which, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of pale yellow Stynylrez primer just to bring out those details, especially in the face where I want it to really shine. Somber gray is next for that base, and that's just the base coat for what I do stonework in, and it's just thematic throughout my entire army, actually. Just knowing where to put the light only on one side, just to have that gradient for each one. It just takes practice to do. Be confident, keep going, and keep practicing until you get more control with the airbrush so you can do just the same. Alright, so next up, some Stynylrez Brown, which we're going to go. I find that it makes a very good earth tone with a little bit of help with other paints, but definitely a great base for earth tones with that Stynylrez primer. And then after which, what we're going to do is heavy blue gray, and we're just going to do some highlights onto the somber gray that we had originally, just to really bring up that almost surreal light coming from the zenith or 45-degree angle. You really just want to capture that. It's definitely the rule of cool here. It's really high contrast when you put a dark color next to the light color, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, just create that transition from that light color, the highlight, all the way to the black, actually, in which we go. Alright, so next up, some bone white. I'm just getting the skulls that I placed within the miniature here and there, just decorating it, adding a layer of interest to the base as you're looking through the miniature. I wanted to definitely have that. He's soaring above everyone else, but the base, I wanted it to look dynamic and to fit into the army. Alright, some WWS Tufts. Now I'm doing so much to these bases, but I'm not putting the cobblestone in. Just didn't have enough room for this, so definitely went straight dirt with this just to make it more thematic. I wanted to add some tufts and other things as well. Alright, so next up, brown color number 2 from War Colors, and this makes an excellent glaze to make sure that the brown off the ground reflects onto the miniature itself, giving another dimension of realism throughout the miniature itself. And this is a really cool miniature. Okay, next up is Caravan Crimson, and while we do this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Ghoul Kings itself. Now, an Abhorrant King is a vicious ruler of the Flesh Eater Quartz, whether he's scrambling across the ground with terrifying speed or riding upon the back of an undead monstrosity. The Abhorrant Ghoul King is a savage embodiment of insanity, and as if his size and strength isn't enough to strike fears into his foe, there's also a case of his madness. If you hang around this dude long enough, you will actually go crazy too, just by being next to him. Now, Abhorrants, like many vampire creatures, are powerful wizards steeped in death magic. Abhorrant Ghoul Kings can use their fell wizardry to knit together their wounds and mend their broken bodies and their mounts, so they can actually heal very well. So yeah, the same dark wizardry, the Abhorrant Ghoul King can actually transform people into his followers and follow their delusions, which is absolutely nuts, literally. Okay, love Ghoul Kings. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to put some accents. We're just taking a Ghoul arm that I had left over from the Start Collecting box of Flesh Eater Quartz. I'm just going to add it to that, the skull, and then the arm coming out. Sort of looks like that. The skull is the head. Just something different. All right, next up, Evil Sunz Scarlet. We're going to head in some Evil Sunz Scarlet, just breaking that down. And actually, I try to dilute it when I paint the red, just so I can have an even amount of coverage, but I don't want to leave any brush strokes here. So I'm just like really paying attention to the smoothness within there. And usually what I do is I start off with Mephiston Red, and then I do Evil Sunz Scarlet as a highlight. Next up, Bone White, just getting the bone areas of the his body piercing, you can call it. Definitely go through his tendrils, so to speak, and then definitely Bone White. Now, if I can avoid painting white, I do, but you couldn't avoid in this one. Let's get a closer view of me doing the skull. Now I'm not painting the entire skull. I'm leaving the sockets of the eyes empty, as you can see there, and I'm leaving the absolute bottom as well. I'm not really painting it bone white either, just so I can add a little bit of brown underneath, so I can have that shadow. I wanted a brown shadow with a bone on the bottom, and then have that highest highlight being that bone white on the top. So just be cognizant of where the light is coming from and how, and that'll inform you how to actually paint your model. All right, so next what we're going to do is continue painting the fingernails. Now, I never thought I would be painting the fingernails of a ghoul, but here we are, right? Here we are. And I just don't leave them bone white. I'm going to add some stuff to it, but this is the base coat for these nails. Just getting through right there. Really cool. I love the positioning of the Ghoul King. He is so dynamic. Now what I did was I took the bone white and I mixed it with Evil Sunz Scarlet, like a 50-50, just for the tongue there, you could see, and then some bone white for the teeth, which is next. And, while painting this, it's difficult to paint on the base like this because it is so tall that sometimes accidents could happen. Oh, ow, ow, ooh. Oh my gosh. All right, anyway, now time for Leather Brown P3, and I'm just going to do some accents. And what I take is that Leather Brown and I mix it in with some Bone White, so this way I can have a different variation, like one of a highlight color to that leather. And leather looks pretty cool when it has a little bit of highlight. And I just mix that Bone White here. I'm going to do some stippling effect, which I'm just dotting. Just little dots here, little dots there. That's all it is. And it doesn't take too long to do. Next up, let's do the eyes in Evil Sunz Scarlet. Again, limiting the color palette here just to make sure that everything seems so cohesive. And that's how I do eyes right there. I just hold on to the miniature, brace my hand, limit the movement, and just do the eyes going really slowly and then bringing it up to where I want it to be right there. See, very slowly. Got it. All right, next up, just doing some more bone features. This is part of the bone necklace that he has right there. And he has that around his neck, so I paint that bone white. Now, in hindsight, I could have painted airbrush this one, but, I had the bone white onto my paintbrush and my palette, so I just went for it. It's not a big deal. Okay, Evil Sunz Scarlet now, just to bring up the highlights as well. Evil Sunz Scarlet. Now, some people think you just add white to red and make it like a lighter white for a highlight. This is not the case because then it'll turn it pink, so be careful with that. Pink is a good undercoat for red, but there's that. Okay, so now we've gotten that. We're going to do some Carroburg Crimson. I'm going to actually paint with the Carroburg Crimson here, where we're just trying to add some shadows here. Just trying to get a darker color. And you can do this with any kind of darker color. I'm doing it with shade right now, but you don't have to. And I'm just trying to shade the darker colors, and I dilute it. Now, I can't just leave the nails a regular color. So what I did was, I took some Seraphon Sepia, and I went over to the fingernails tip. the tips of the fingernails. Now you can add any colors to this. Various stages. I've added purple to it and purple red to it. So this seems like, you know, they have like some kind of disease in the nails coming out. Okay, next up, I'm going to put that necklace onto this bad boy's neck, just hanging down there. It's pretty cool. Next up, I'm not using a wet palette, but I'm using Vallejo Metal Color. I highly recommend the Vallejo Metal Color. It has the finest grained metal shards inside that you can use from any acrylic paint. So I really do highly recommend the Vallejo Metal Color, and do not use it in your wet palette. I see I use it on a dry palette right there. And you know, you can glaze with this stuff. You can do so much with this stuff. This is just a great product. Next, Pale Burnt Metal. There's like almost a 50-50 mix there, just mixing it right there. And just trying to have a little bit of a transition here, and I'm just hitting the tips of things, just having a little highlight there, a little bit of a glow, only on one side. Just choose the direction of the light. All right, you're going to do edge highlighting there, and again, keeping consistency and just blending that in. Next up is Vallejo Model Color Black. I'm going to do the hair black this time, just to separate it from my other models, and just doing something a little bit different. You just have little tendrils going through. Delightful little model this thing is. You know, for being one of the leaders of my armies, an HQ choice, there's not much to him at all. I mean, it was quite easy to build, almost embarrassingly so. So Dry Rust from Vallejo Game Effects here. I'm going to put it on rather thickly. In fact, too thick. And I go back and I start taking some off, and I'll show you the technique that I use here. I actually use an X-Acto blade, just lightly taking off, and I can't stress this enough, lightly, really lightly taking off the rust, the excess rust. But if you do it really lightly, it comes right off. I mean, it doesn't adhere really well. It's kind of dry. I think I let it dry for like 5 minutes before I did this, but it was pretty cool. Worked well. It worked well. All right, last but not least, some Black Stynel Res Primer. And that is it, my friends, for this video. I tell you, for this tutorial section anyway, it couldn't be easier to do the Ghoul King. Like, it was so simple to put it together. It was embarrassingly simple for an HQ choice to paint and build up and make look dynamic. Just with a little bit of flavor to it, you can make yours look awesome. All right. Well, let's check out some pictures, and I'll catch you on the outro. Well, thank you so much for joining me throughout this tutorial. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Amazon affiliate link, which has a lot of different items that I use personally for my channel. If you do click on the link and buy one of those things, the channel actually gets a monetary kickback at absolutely zero cost to you. But if you don't want to support us in that way, I'm just happy you came out and watched the video. Well, if you like this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.